Hi, I'm Isabel,
Hi, I'm Kayla.
and we both did our thesis on reading habits, empathy, and personal intelligence. So, first, we're going to talk about the previous research done on this topic. Narrative fiction is often described as a simulation of other minds, which led people to believe that it might increase the ability to empathize with others. Positive correlation between empathy and long term reading of narrative fiction was found, but not short term causal effects in experimental design studies.
And personal intelligence is defined as the capacity to reason about personality and to use personality and personal information to enhance one's thoughts. So we thought that there would be a correlation or an effect or even a mediation of personal intelligence between reading and empathy. So we just thought that that would be a good idea just to see if there's an interaction between them.
Now we'll talk about our study. So I asked the research question, is there a relationship between objective/subjective reading habits and empathy and personal intelligence? So I hypothesized that there would be a positive correlation between objective and subjective reading habits and empathy, and a positive correlation between objective and subjective reading habits and personal intelligence.
And then my research question was, is personal intelligence a possible mediator for the effects of fiction reading on empathy? And then we had a shared first hypothesis, but my second one was was there going to be a correlation between objective and subjective reading reports? And is personal intelligence and empathy, will those scores be positively correlated?
Now we'll move on to our method. So in our final analysis, we had 78 participants with a mean age of 19. It was a predominantly white women or trans women sample.
And then we use the Tabi Mini 12 to assess personal intelligence, which has been widely used to do so. We use the interpersonal reactivity index to measure empathy, which doesn't only look at empathy, but we use the parts that did look at empathy to assess and analyze our data. And then for engagement with fiction, we use the author recognition task and self-reported reading habits for fiction, nonfiction, and non-recreational reading.
Now we'll look at our results. So we did not find a significant correlation between personal intelligence and objective reading habits, as you can see in the orange, but we did find a significant correlation between empathy and objective reading habits, as you can see in the cyan. We did not find any significant correlations between any of the subjective reading habits and personal intelligence or empathy, as you can see in the yellow.
And for empathy and personal intelligence, you can see in the light blue that there was basically no correlation and it was not a significant result. But in the green, you can see for subjective versus objective reading habits, those are all statistically significant, but they were all weak correlations.
Now we'll move on to our discussion.
So for strength and limitations, we saw a lack of diversity in our sample, including what type of students we had in our sample. The subjective reading habits, internal validity, there could have been subject bias or social desirability bias where people who could kind of flub their results and say that they read more than they actually did. And then this study was only correlational. There was not causal relationships. But strength for this study, we had objective reading habits with a good amount of internal validity with the art R. And then our focus was on long-term reading habits. So we did a good job of just kind of focusing on that, not looking at any short-term effects. And then adding personal intelligence to the discussion, and the test of personal intelligence was widely used and tested. So personal intelligence we had a good time analyzing that. It was pretty easy to do.
The importance and implications of our study, we now have a better understanding of how to increase the ability to empathize and understand oneself, which could be a potential intervention with people who are struggling with that. And we contributed to previous research, which kind of has divided results on the subject. Our proposal for the next subject, or for the next study, we want to do an experimental design so we can find causal relationships, and we're going to introduce an independent variable of different readings given of narrative fiction and nonfiction on two different subjects.
And then for measures, we're going to use the same studies and measures that we used before, but our additional measure will be the ability to predict what happens next in a passage that will be given to our participants.
And that's our study. Thanks.
Thank you.